Day 7 concludes in Karen Reed's trial, and today we mostly got to hear from the friends, the good friends of John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. Now, the day started with the finishing off the testimony of Lieutenant Charles Ray. His testimony began at the tail end of day 6, which is only half a day, and completed today. Nothing too exciting about Lieutenant Charles Ray. He did not actually respond to 34 Fairview. He actually went to do a well-being checkup at 1 Meadows Avenue. That's where John O'Keefe lived, and that's what he was doing. So you got to see some videos of his dash cam of what was going on there, the snow, the cars, him knocking on the door. Nothing too exciting with his testimony. But then moving on to the friends of John O'Keefe. So we first heard from Michael Camerano. Michael Camerano, good friend of John O'Keefe. And what's also interesting is that they both had children the same age. So Michael Camerano had a daughter, and John O'Keefe's niece, Kaylee, was around the same age. They're both finishing 8th grade. They both applied to a specific high school, and they both got accepted. So it was a very exciting day. John was elated. He was ecstatic. He was extremely happy that Kaylee got accepted to this high school. And that's what happened on January 28th, that Friday before his untimely death. Now, something interesting that Michael Camerano testified to is that John never wore a coat, even in the winter, even in Boston. He didn't wear a coat. And now everyone has some friends like this, even in the winter time where it's snowing and it's freezing. Some people just don't like to wear a coat. And John apparently was one of those people. Now, this is also interesting because remember, there was a paramedic that testified, the same paramedic that testified that he heard Karen Reed say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." He also testified that John O'Keefe was wearing a big, heavy winter jacket. And that obviously was incorrect. That was proven wrong. And now we're hearing, again, more testimony about that paramedic obviously being wrong, and which is coming back to the cross-examination of that paramedic where Alan Jackson said, so basically your memory of that night is as good as your memory about that winter jacket. And that was how he finished off very strongly with his cross-examination of that paramedic. Anyway, moving on. So they went together to C.F. McCarthy's. C.F. McCarthy's, a bar in Boston. They went to, I guess, celebrate. And John O'Keefe goes there with Michael Camerano. Now, they are joined there by Karen Reed. Karen Reed goes to join them there, as well as Kurt Roberts. Kurt Roberts, who is the husband of Carrie Roberts. We did not yet get to hear from Carrie Roberts. I'm sure everyone was hoping they were going to hear from Carrie Roberts today because she was one of the women that went with Karen Reed to discover John O'Keefe's body. But Kurt Roberts they were joined there by Kurt Roberts. Kurt Roberts, actually, interesting how he ended up coming up. He didn't want to come out at all that night because he knew there was a storm coming, but he was pressured in a friendly way by his friends that we're not going to say exactly what he was called, but they were pressuring him, come on out, don't be a baby, let's go, get out here and join us at the bar. And he succumbed to the pressure. He joined his friends at the bar, had a few drinks, and left a little early, around 10ish. He left the bar. And what they referred to said, did a Irish goodbye meaning that you don't say goodbye, you just leave. So he just left, and he left around 10ish. They were drinking, and Michael Camerano said they drank about 6 beers each. So between Michael Camerano and John O'Keefe, they both drank 6 beers. Now, is 6 beers a lot? It really depends. John O'Keefe's a big guy. He's 6'2". He's a big guy. Somebody who's used to drinking beer, his alcohol tolerance is very high. So 6 beers may not be too much. For a person who doesn't drink that often, a person who's smaller, then it could affect them a lot. So it's not necessarily true that 6 beers can really affect John O'Keefe that much. Now, he did continue drinking at the Waterfall, which is the next bar that they went to. But this is what we hear, at least from Michael Camerano, how much they drank. And they drank Bud Light. Bud Light's not such a heavy beer. It's a light beer. So, again, not necessarily that John O'Keefe was inebriated or drunk from 6 beers. Now, he also testified that Karen Reed was drinking from a glass, and the glass had clear liquid in it, suggesting that it would be vodka. Vodka obviously has a lot of a higher alcohol content, and Karen Reed is not exactly a 6'2" big burly police officer. So it could be that that glass of vodka could affect her differently. Now, again, we don't know her alcohol tolerance, so it's possible that she's just having a few sips and it didn't really affect her that much. But the testimony throughout the day today was that no one really was acting too drunk or too inebriated. It seems like everyone was really in control of themselves, just having a good time. Just getting a little buzzed and drinking a little bit as responsible adults. Now, his son, Michael Camerano's son, at the time was hit with a hockey stick. He was playing some hockey, got hit, and he lost a tooth, and that's what he got called for, and therefore he left the bar, picked up his son, picked up his daughter from John O'Keefe's house, and went to sleep. Now, he goes to sleep, and he wakes up at 6 a.m. from his phone ringing off the hook, his personal cell phone ringing off the hook. And he sees his phone, he gets to his phone, he realizes that he has many missed calls from Karen Reed, and he has many missed calls from his wife's work. His wife, who's going to testify after him, is a nurse, and she was working the night shift. That's apparently her hours were the weekends, the night shift. Not exactly the shifts probably that she wants, but that's what her job is, and that's what she was doing. So she got a lot of these missed calls from Karen Reed, number one, and number two, from his wife calling from her work. He calls his wife back, and his wife tells him that John did not come home that night. So he goes to the O'Keefe house. He picks up Kaylee. The garage door was open, and he couldn't get it to close. So he couldn't get this garage door to close, which is an interesting part of this story. And I guess we're going to have to hear more testimony, more evidence about how did that garage door break? And does it have anything to do with what happened that night? But he was not able to get that garage to close. First, he thought that maybe the snow was blocking the sensors, so he shoveled a little bit, but nevertheless, he was not able to get that garage door to close, and therefore he had to manually, physically close that garage door, go out the side door, and then he was able to leave the residence. Another interesting fact that came out is that he personally never tried to call John himself, which is, I think, an interesting fact. Why wouldn't he if he was a good friend of John O'Keefe and he hears that John did not come home? I think the natural thing would be to call him. But I believe that was his testimony, that he did not attempt to call John. Now, the cross-examination. Cross-examination was, and this is going to be consistent throughout everyone's testimony, that no one there who was with Karen Reed and John O'Keefe that night said that they sensed any sort of disagreement or distance between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. It seemed that they were a regular, happy couple. There's no fights. In fact, Michael Camerano said that he never really observed them fighting with each other at all. They would just sometimes banter with each other. That's what he called it. They would sometimes banter with each other, probably normal in all relationships, probably more normal in all relationships to get into some disagreements and some arguments. But nevertheless, he never saw them fight, and especially that night itself, never saw that there was any issue that day, January 28th, when they went to the bar that night. He did say that John O'Keefe did not like that Karen spoiled them. And again, exactly what John O'Keefe's definition of spoiling is curious or questionable in this case. Exactly what he felt is spoiling, like taking them to Dunkin' Donuts. Again, we don't know all the details, but from what we've heard so far, it didn't seem that Karen was really overly spoiling them. But, John O'Keefe has his idea. And again, we didn't hear so much testimony about it, so we don't want to speculate too much. But we do know that John O'Keefe did not want Karen spoiling his nephew and niece. They seemed happy at C.F. McCarthy's. He testified that when Karen walked in, they exchanged a hug with John O'Keefe and they kissed each other. So it seemed that everything was great. They were close and intimate. Everything was fine. The relationship was normal. Everything was normal. So that was Michael Camerano's testimony. Then his wife, Catherine Camerano, took the stand, and she testified, amongst other things, a lot of the repeat testimony, but she testified that she gets a call from Karen in the middle of her night shift, and she's frantic. Karen is absolutely frantic, and she's asking, "Where is Mike?" 100 times. And so remember, Karen called Mike a bunch of times. Again, Michael Camerano, he testified that when he woke up in the morning at 6 a.m., he saw a bunch of missed calls from Karen Reed, and now Karen Reed is calling his wife, Catherine, asking, "Where's Mike?" He's not answering his phone. And she's calling him 100 times because John didn't come home. And they speak to each other a little bit more throughout the night. They text each other, and eventually that leads to a text that Karen sends to Catherine Camerano at 6:34 a.m., texting that John is dead. He's dead, and he was in the snow, and that's it. After they're texting back and forth and calling each other back and forth, and that was the last communication that they had. They never had any further communication between Karen Reed and Catherine Camerano. Now, in cross-examination, he did bring out a good point, Alan Jackson, that you do realize that Karen Reed's phone was seized, and she wasn't even able to contact you after that morning. So, the fact that she was not able to contact you, that's not her fault. It's because her phone was taken away by the police. All right. Now, I think what you have to really start to think about, if you're on the jury, certainly, but even if you're just watching this trial, is Karen Reed's actions. Everyone has testified so far that at the scene, she was hysterical. She was beside herself. Now, the argument against... Okay, so let's take it one step at a time. Right? So the natural reaction is that someone who is acting so completely crazy did not intend to kill the person that she's going completely hysterical over, and that she is distraught, and that she's can't get a hold of herself, and she's just screaming things, and she's very loud. So the natural reaction is that this is not a person who killed John O'Keefe, because if she did and she knew exactly what she was doing, then why would she be acting so hysterical? Well, maybe you'll say that this was an act. This was all an act. She knew what she did, but she wanted to appear innocent, so therefore she put on this act. Now, that's an argument. I'm sure the state could be making that argument. Again, if you want second-degree murder means that there was intent here. It wasn't premeditated. You didn't plan everything out beforehand, but there was a time where she decided, you know what, I'm going to kill him. And she kills him. So that goes into second-degree murder. It wasn't an accident. That's not second-degree murder. Second-degree murder is not an accident. So if she by accident backed into him, that is not second-degree murder, right? So assuming that she intended to kill him and she left him there to die, this would have to be the act of her life. So that I'm sure that was what the state is going to be arguing to the jury, that this was all just one big act, right? I think that what we've heard is that the car is going to go into reverse at 24 miles per hour, and obviously with the intent of killing John O'Keefe. All right. Now, the second part of this is that even if you want to buy that this was all one big act by Karen Reed, this is all just one tremendous act of her life, she also had to think at the time that, you know what, now it's a good idea for me to call these people. Call Michael Camerano 100 times on his phone, call Catherine Camerano, and also put on more of an act. And then also to call Jennifer McCabe in the morning and call Carrie Roberts and get them all together and start searching for this body. So this was a very quick and cunning plan of Karen Reed, if you're going to buy this part. And again, I'm not saying one way or the other, but this is seemingly what you have to swallow to be able to get to a second-degree murder. And that is that she intended to kill John, and then this was all one tremendous act at the moment, right? Again, she did not plan this all beforehand. If this was all planned beforehand, this is premeditated murder. This is first-degree murder. So this was not all planned out weeks in advance or days in advance. This was spur of the moment that she decided to kill John O'Keefe. That's second degree. So she's going to do that, and then at that split second, she decides, you know what? It's probably a good idea for me to call Michael Camerano, call Catherine Camerano, call Jennifer McCabe, get everyone together, and just pretend that I don't know anything about this and pretend that I'm all hysterical and I'm calling all these people. That's what you have to believe if you're going to find her guilty of second-degree murder. All right? All right, so let's just something that we have to think about and digest and really understand. Let's move on. So now you have Kurt Roberts. Kurt Roberts is also a friend. He wakes up from screaming that he hears Karen Reed when he's talking to his wife, Carrie Roberts. That's what he wakes up to. He just hears all this Karen Reed, again, going hysterical on the phone to Carrie Roberts. He also testified that he did not have a puffy winter jacket that night. Nobody was slurring their words. No one was stumbling. Everybody appeared to be fine. No one appeared to be inebriated or drunk or too high that they're not able to function. So that was also what was brought out by Kurt Roberts. Then we had Rebecca Trayers, who was the bartender at Waterfall. Waterfall was the bar where they moved to after C.F. McCarthy's. They were there for another couple of hours till about around 12 a.m. And she also testified that nobody appeared to be too intoxicated. Everybody seemed to have been handling their alcohol just fine. Okay, then we had Nicholas Kolakithis. I hope I'm saying his name right. He is an attorney. We don't know what type of attorney he is, but he is an attorney. And he also is very friendly with the McCabe's, Matt and John. And they were together at this basketball game. There was a basketball game, a girls' basketball game, varsity basketball game. I think there was a JV game as well. But they were all at the basketball game together. And then afterwards, he was hungry, so he went to the Waterfall to eat. And he was there with the McCabe's, Matt and Jennifer McCabe. And he did see John O'Keefe and Karen come in around 11 o'clock. He testified that there was no arguing between John O'Keefe. Everything was fine. The relationship looked completely fine. Didn't look toxic. Didn't look like they were upset at each other. It looked like a fine, loving relationship. And then at some point, the group decided to go to 34 Fairview at some point, and not a specific invitation to specific people, just saying, hey, guys, let's all go to 34 Fairview. Right? They're deciding, what should we do? The bar's closing. Where should we go? Should we go across the street to the pizza shop? Or should we go home to someone's home? And I guess Brian and Nicole Albert suggested that they go to the McCabe's at 34 Fairview. So the cross-examination on the attorney, Nicholas Kolakithis. Also, he said that he didn't see any sort of problems between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe. He said he also had no problems with Karen Reed watching and taking care of his children. He completely trusted Karen Reed. It's not like this some scary person who can't be trusted with children. He also heard that they were planning a vacation together. So this is not just the end of a terrible toxic relationship. They're actually planning to do things together. Let's go on vacation. And in fact, he even testified, I don't know if the state wanted him to say this, but probably not, but he testified that they were so loving and affectionate to each other that his own wife said to him, why aren't you that as affectionate to me? Why don't you act like that to me? All right. Now, what was interesting is that also they showed in the video, this is in cross-examination, he showed in that video at Waterfall that it seemed that Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were drinking together. They were friends, and they were pretending to spar with each other. They were pretending to, throw punches at each other. That wasn't real, but it looked like pretending to fight or wrestle for some reason. Now, again, I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to bring out with that point was, but you do see that in the video, and it makes you just wonder what they're doing. Now, to say that they were planning and like kind of showing what their plan was to do with John O'Keefe later by punching him, and that's why they were pretending to fight, I don't know. That's hard to swallow. But you did see that in the video, and I'm not exactly sure what the defense is going to try to do with that part of the video. Also, another part is that he heard Karen singing John's praises, and she was just saying how she admires him. Look at this guy. He took in his nephew and niece, and that's a tremendous sacrifice. These aren't even his own children. Of course, everybody loves their nephews and nieces, but to take care of them as your own children, that's got to be very difficult. It's a big sacrifice. And she was saying how she admires John for doing that, and that's true. And she's saying how special he is. So this is Karen the night before, allegedly, she decided to kill him. It's very strange if that was what happened later, that she really just hated John with all her life, with all her heart and soul. So, however, the state may say that this is all, again, part of the plan, that she's just trying to pretend that she admires him and really she doesn't admire him. Now, moving on to Karina Kolakithis. So Karina is Nick's wife, and Nick was the attorney. Karina is a pharmacist. And she also said that she spoke to Karen and Jennifer McCabe for an extended time at the Waterfall. So at that Waterfall restaurant or bar, they were all talking together. The women were all talking together, having a great time. And also, she also said that she heard how much how much Karen admired John. And the only thing is that she wished that other family members would actually stand up and help out John. And that's also a normal sentiment to have. Here you have the girlfriend of John O'Keefe, and John O'Keefe is taking on these two children to raise them, all the sacrifice that's involved, spending who knows how much money on them, making sure that they're cared for, taken care of, and spending all his hard-earned money on them. Like it's very special. And then you would think that you'd get some support from the people from your family who's not doing that on a daily basis, who would still offer to help whatever they can. And she was complaining that it didn't seem that John O'Keefe's family members were stepping up enough to help John with raising these two children. And that can be understood. Doesn't mean that she's just this bitter, angry woman, and but it makes a lot of sense. All right. She also said that she heard that they were planning a trip together, and here is where it got very interesting. She said that Jennifer, at the end of that night, when they're saying, okay, what should we do? Should we go to the pizza store across the street and hang out a little bit more? Or should we go to 34 Fairview? Here's where Jennifer McCabe puts her arm around Karen Reed, and said, you're coming with me. You're coming with me, meaning back to 34 Fairview. Now, of course, the report was that she wasn't doing this in a serious, threatening way. You're coming with me, and you better come with me or I'm going to kill you or something. It was said in a very friendly way. Oh, come on, you're coming with me. You're coming with me. Like as a friendly way. But still, something can be niggling that this is some way to lure Karen Reed to the house. And Karen Reed's not going to go herself, obviously. She's going to go with John O'Keefe, her boyfriend. She's not going to go there herself. So it can start making you think that maybe there's something else going on here. Now, again, it could completely be innocent, and they're having such a great time, and these women were friends or friendly enough, and they had a long night together, and they were all talking and having a great time. So she was saying, come on, let's continue the night. Let's continue. It's possible. But because this ended up in a murder, that's where all these questions are going to become about what exactly was really going through everyone's minds and who really was acting with other types of intentions here. All right. And then what happened is Karen then also said, well, where are we going? So Jennifer was saying, come on, let's go. You're coming with us. You're coming with me. And then Karen said, well, where are we going? And this is where Jennifer said, it will be a surprise. Now, again, what do you mean it will be a surprise? Is that just friendly? Oh, come on, I'm going to surprise you. I'll surprise you. Just come with me. It'll be a surprise. Now, we've all probably been in situations where our good friends have said, you really need a break. Just come with me. I'm going to take care of everything. Just it'll be a surprise. Right? And we trust our friends. We'll do it. Sure, no problem. We trust our friends. But again, when it ends with a murder, then things start going in your mind a little bit differently. So here you got Jennifer putting her arm around Karen, saying, you're coming with us, in a friendly way, of course. And then she says, don't worry, it'll be a surprise. And then what do you know? John O'Keefe and Karen Reed go to the house, and John O'Keefe ends up dead. So the end of that story is that Karina said that it was interesting because then she saw that Karen was with John and not with Jennifer anymore. It sounded like Jennifer was saying, oh, come on, come with me. You're coming with us. We're going to go back together. And now all of a sudden she sees Karen Reed going with John O'Keefe to their car to go together. Now, it's not so strange because even if Jennifer was saying, oh, come on, you're coming with us. But then once they're talking about, okay, fine, I'll come to your house and we'll continue hanging out and we'll continue talking or whatever. But then she's like, yeah, well, I have John O'Keefe. I have my boyfriend here. I'll go with my boyfriend. We'll meet you there. Like, it doesn't mean that she has to actually travel with Jennifer McCabe. It seems strange to Karina. It doesn't seem so strange to me. But we all know that the end of that story was that they actually did go to 34 Fairview, and the rest is the question of this case, exactly what happened. So the cross-examination was, again, just to say, tell us, how was the relationship between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed that night? And Karina says, yes, they were all lovey-dovey. They were just all over each other. They seemed like they were in love and having a great relationship. So that was the end of the testimony today. Interesting day. We will continue following this. And thanks for watching. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe, like, and we will see you next time.